The first things we want to talk about in this first module are three things, three Active Directory logical components. They are domains, trees, and forests. And these things become very important as you start to build the Active Directory hierarchy because, again, they determine how your enterprise is organized. We start with a discussion of domains. Domains are the core unit of Active Directory organization. Similar to sites, they represent a unit of Active Directory replication. And what that means is that all domain controllers that you install for a given domain that belong to the same domain will share the exact same copy of the Active Directory database. They are a unit of logical organization. What do? They collect all of the things in our enterprise, and to show you what I mean here, I want to show you this graphic here that I've pulled up. This is what things do we logically organize in a domain. These kinds of things. Email servers, applications, firewall services, all of these things, clients, users, computers, everything that really defines a computing enterprise, information is stored about those things in the Active Directory database. And within a domain, that is the container object or that is the boundary around those things. So it's a very central concept to our Active Directory enterprise is the concept of a domain. Also, when we create our domains, as we'll see, and actually as we've already seen, the domain names follow established DNS conventions. So your domain will be yahoo.com or beanlake.org, just as you might see them on the internet. But you can also use names like domain.brian or something like that. As long as it follows the naming convention, you're okay. You don't have to use a name that would be usable on the public internet. You can have your own private internet, if you will. As long as you follow the DNS conventions, Active Directory will behave as it should. Now, once you start to build a bigger type of an enterprise, you may find the need for trees. And a tree, an Active Directory tree, is one or more Active Directory domains that share a contiguous namespace. For example, if our parent domain is beanlake.org, then our child namespace in a contiguous namespace would be something like kansascity.beanlake.org. So in other words, they share a parent-child relationship. And these domains in a tree, and we can build these tree hierarchies as big as we want to, as deep as we want to, again, just as long as we follow the DNS guidelines for domain naming. They are linked with a two-way transitive trust, and we'll talk about trust relationships later on in this module, in this chapter 3. The last thing we want to talk about in this introductory module here is a forest, an Active Directory forest. And a forest combines one or more trees. A forest does not have to share a common namespace. In other words, the trees in the forest, they don't have to be named the same. You could have hotmail.com and msn.com and include both of those things in the same forest. The roots of the trees are linked with trust relationships. So the domains within a tree are linked with trust relationships. The roots of each tree in a forest are also linked with trust relationships. And what these trust relationships represent, to define them quite briefly, is that they represent an administrative link that gives you potential access to resources in other domains. So again, the forest, all of the domains in the trees and in the forest will be linked with these trust relationships, and this maintains a possible administrative relationship between two or more organizations. Again, think of a very common example. Microsoft would probably have Microsoft.com, MSN.com, Hotmail.com all under its belt and may want to administer those things as one big entity. Now the drawback here, as far as talking about logical things in Active Directory, is that it's hard to see. Other than a couple of pictures here, and I'll do this when I can, when I'm able to give you some pictures, I'll try to give you something like this to help you visualize what we're talking about here. But just so you know, if you're looking at other diagrams, the representation for a domain is a triangle. And I've got one last thing I want to show you here. That should be it. There we go. This is what you see a domain, and sites can exist as units of replication within a domain. So we'll talk about these things a little bit later on, but I just want to give you an idea of what you're looking at when you see something like this. A domain is a triangle, and that's what you always see is in a schematic. The representation is that triangle.